Hi, I'm Brian Kellerman, co-founder and Chief Food Safety Officer at Kellerman Consulting, and you are watching our video series on a culture of food safety. In this video, we are going to focus on GFSI requirements for a culture of food safety and dig into the specifics on how to approach meeting those requirements for each major GFSI scheme. Whether you are running an SQF, BRC, FSSC 22000, or PrimusGFS program, we will explain how to make sure you are meeting the standards each year. Even if you do not currently run a GFSI program, or if you are considering what it means to have a high-level safety and quality program in your facility, we will be discussing how to interpret the code for each scheme to start setting those up. GFSI is the Global Food Safety Initiative, an international organization that publishes requirements for food safety schemes to adopt when those safety programs want to be benchmarked to that GFSI level. SQF, BRC, FSSC 22000, PrimusGFS, IFS, and Global GAP are all food safety schemes benchmarked to GFSI. Because GFSI certification is currently the highest standard for food safety in the world, and because it's accepted in all supply chains as proof of a comprehensive food safety program, it is important that food safety programs subscribed to all of those schemes attempt to comply with all of the GFSI rules. Starting with version 8 of the GFSI rulebook, a culture of food safety was added as a core requirement for any program to meet their standards. After this update to the GFSI rulebook, all of the schemes that didn't previously have the culture of food safety as a requirement added it as one of those requirements for their schemes. SQF and BRC did so in 2021, and PrimusGFS is set to do so in 2022. Now let's take a closer look at SQF. As SQF adopted a culture of food and food packaging safety requirements to their GFSI compliance scheme, what was removed was language requiring the facility to make provision for safety of operations and products. The term making provision means allocating enough planning, money, space, equipment, and people to assure safety. So no perpetual rust on pipes, no permanent out-of-order signs, no ongoing short staffing situations, and no excuse for failure to spend money on improvements. Making provision was not too far off of establishing a culture of food safety in the sense that management is supposed to check on the status of resources with enough frequency to make sure they were still enough to run the program correctly. Looking at the new requirements in SQF Edition 9, we can see that by adopting the language of a culture of food safety, a more structured assessment using the scheduled meetings, walkthrough, feedback, and values discussions from our previous videos are required. We also know that SQF auditors are going to expect some kind of coherent metric or performance indicators as part of the assessment of the culture of food safety. If you have previously relied on nonconformances, customer complaints, and ship to commit, or some equivalent like pallet design, you may find SQF auditors now issuing nonconformances and requiring specific process metrics and indicators. SQF auditors now also expect to see feedback through written assessments. These can be interviews, surveys, facilitated training discussions, or documented meetings between senior management and employees that focus on potential areas of improvement to the SQF system, as well as validation and verification reviews for those culture of food safety activities as part of Clause 2.5.5. I do want to mention here that a culture of food safety philosophy and actions presented in these Kellerman Consulting videos do not directly address the SQF clauses, but if these practices are adopted, they will meet or exceed SQF standards. But please do not rely solely on our recommended program, and make sure your program references and meets all SQF clauses in preparation for your audit. Now let's shift our focus to BRC. BRC has included requirements for a culture of food safety and quality in section 1.1.2, and as with most aspects of the BRC requirements, the expectations are generally more rigorous. BRC had upheld expectations of employee feedback for several editions, so while feedback is a newer concept in SQF, here some of the culture of food safety activities are more of a continuation of previous BRC expectation. In previous years, suggestion boxes were frequently presented to meet the BRC standard, and as long as there was evidence of follow-ups to good suggestions, that could have met the feedback requirement. Now, BRC expectation focuses on both actively requested feedback and anonymous feedback, meaning employees can report issues without providing their identity. Beyond that requirement, we really need to build out a comprehensive program with the core values, key metrics, meetings, and follow-ups to maintain the BRC program. Visual graphics, scorecards, and dashboards are best practice for management presentations at this level. As with SQF, our videos do not directly address the BRC clauses, but if these practices are adopted, they will meet or exceed BRC standards. As with SQF, please do not rely solely on our recommended program, and make sure your program references and meets all BRC clauses in preparation for your audit. Now let's look at FSSC 22000. FSSC 22000 requires purchase of the audit materials for their scheme, so we cannot reprint them as a graphic here. But with that said, as we look at the ISO 22000 Food Safety Manual at the heart of FSSC 22000, we really see the clear origins of the culture of food safety now integrated into all GFSI programs. The core concept of communication is elevated by the ISO 22000 book in ways that SQF and BRC do not require. When we think about the requirement to communicate and document that communication at all levels of the organization, in addition to suppliers, customers, and service providers, we can piece together that meetings and training are crucial. As with BRC, employee feedback is required as part of the program, as is assessments of employees post-training to make sure the information was understood. During these assessments, evaluating whether the culture of food safety at the facility is understood would be best practice within the larger FSSC 22000 program. Fancier computer presentations, as would be common in BRC programs, may not be necessary for FSSC 22000 culture of food safety programs, but you will need to focus more on communication of values, metrics, objectives, and practices in this program. So, the culture of food safety requirements are very vigorous. Lastly, Primus and Global GAP have not released updated language on a culture of food safety as of this video. However, for PrimusGFS, we can expect that feedback from indoor and outdoor farm workers, careful consideration of water sources, chemical controls for pesticides and fertilizers are expected as part of the culture of food safety. Additionally, we should expect to include a facility presentation of NUOCAs and disciplinary actions when they occur, as well as multilingual trainings of the program will likely be required. One last aspect of the GFSI programs that should be considered as part of the culture of food safety is the continuous improvement expectations embedded at the core of GFSI programs. Each facility is expected to not just repair and correct mistakes, but to separately improve and grow as an organization based on learned information. A culture of food safety program in a GFSI scheme should have a clear inclusion of examples of this, and those improvements and growth should be presented to management, the internal auditors, and as part of the annual review of those programs.